It's the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome! Hey, everybody. Welcome in. My name is Chris, and this is a show about keeping your glasses clean. What is going on? How the heck are you? Thank you so much for listening to the little podcast that could. Today, of course, you know you can keep it tuned right here for your wall-to-wall Hall of Fame game coverage. Can't wait to dive into every single snap of Panthers-Cardinals. Oh, and I am touching my fictional earpiece and being told I will not be watching the Hall of Fame game. Sorry about that. You'll have to tune in to social media and Reddit to get the freakouts and one-game decisions in a game where Jeremiah Love apparently not even going to play. I will most certainly not be partaking of that game, but of course, I am partaking with many of you, the daily stories that come out of training camp as we try and assemble our strategies for our fantasy football drafts, which are, I think, mostly for all of us, like a few weeks away. The closer to Labor Day we can push our drafts, I think the happier we'll be, no question. Most of the stories in training camp aren't really stories, but certainly it's a story when this guy signs with a team.
I like the way you work it, Stefon Diggity, not a trash bag at all.
Oh, he ain't out of the league just yet. Stefon Diggs is a Commander. He spent a year with the Texans, tore an ACL, spent a year with the Patriots, finished as the wide receiver 24 in standard, 17 in PPR, topped 1,000 yards, which used to be kind of a modest achievement, but you got to realize only 19 wideouts last year got to 1,000 yards receiving. Another symptom of how spread out receptions are getting around the league. And so Diggs goes to Washington, certainly making less money than he was slated to make with the Patriots before they released him. The contract in D.C. is worth, quote unquote, up to $12 million, which means it's not $12 million. Just yesterday on the Yacht Club podcast, as an honorable mention for the topic of players who could lose their jobs by week 1, I mentioned every Commander's pass catcher, not named Terry McLaurin, and then Andy and I talked a little bit about how, last year Jaylen Lane kind of would pop one week and I'd be interested, but then the Commanders would decide, oh, now it's a Luke McCaffrey week. You have Antonio Williams, the third round rookie receiver, early in camp, seems to have gotten okay reviews, but Diggs just arrives with an entirely different kind of portfolio. And so, I actually recorded a mock draft with Jake Seeley last night, which will appear on the Harris Football YouTube channel later today, Thursday, by the time you're hearing this maybe. And Jake took Stefon Diggs in a later round and then asked me whether Diggs signing with the Commanders changed my rank, and I had to admit it didn't, because yes, indeed, Diggs was the only player in my ranks who didn't have a team listed with him, but when I was trying to figure out where I was going to rank him without a team, I kind of was pretty much picturing what I would do with him as a Commander, because this move had made so much sense for so long and had been long rumored. So I didn't move Diggs. I have him ranked 45 among receivers, standard, 43 PPR, very clearly draftable with some legitimate upside if the situation is good. I don't know that he's the driver of an offense being amazing, but if he's in a great offense, then he could be very useful for fantasy. And what matters most is how did he play with the Patriots last year? He was an important part of that magic carpet ride to the Super Bowl. An obvious vocal leader on the team, was very, very good against zone. He was reliable. He still had really good hands, bordering on kitten mittens for sure. He was half-time out of the slot, but he did make some plays out wide as well, tailed off a little bit toward the end of the year. He got a lot quieter in the playoffs, and I rewatched some of those snaps back. It seemed pretty clear that the good defenses the Patriots faced in the playoffs, Chargers, Texans, Broncos, Seahawks, they understood the assignment. There really wasn't anyone else in that New England receiving core who was going to beat man coverage, who was going to beat double teams, so they really focused on mauling Diggs closer to the line a lot more, and he just isn't going to punish that. He just doesn't have those kind of quicks anymore that can make a defense pay for press coverage, for, getting up in his face. So he was just easier to erase than earlier in his career. He's not the same player as earlier in his career, and he shouldn't be your NFL team's best receiver. And as long as McLaurin is healthy in DC, he won't be. It's a needed fit. It's a good fit. I don't view it as a negative for Terry McLaurin. He's in his prime. He's still fast. There are simply always going to be other receivers on every NFL team. Diggs is going to have 5 or 6 targets a game because someone else was always going to have 5 or 6 targets a game. Probably this is good for the potential of the offense just being a better environment. I think Jaden Daniels, it clearly would benefit, and everyone associated with the offense. If it's a better offense, there are more touchdowns, there are more yards, you keep the ball longer, it's just good overall. So Diggs, more passenger as from a fantasy perspective. Him having a ceiling is related to the Commanders going back to 2 years ago and being a very good offense, which they weren't last year. And you could argue largely that was a Marcus Mariota problem, not anything else. But I don't view this as any reason to downgrade Terry McLaurin. So we are truly in full swing here. We've got 5 podcast episodes per week rolling. That has been a fun adjustment. We've got a couple of YouTube shows posting each week throughout August into and up to Labor Day. They'll usually be Tuesday and Thursday, including 1 mock draft per week leading up to the season. This week's draft, I mentioned, is with Jake Seeley. Next week, it'll be your pal and mine, Jake Trowbridge, mock drafting with me. The 2026 Harris Football Player Profile Almanac came out on Monday. Thank you so much for the kind words that you've sent about how much fun you're having reading it. That makes me joyful, because every day from the beginning of May, probably till about mid-July, I was writing 5 profiles a day and chuckling and trying to imagine the fun that everybody would have reading it. Also, very much for the kind words about the artwork. Also incredibly fun. Action figures was the theme this year. So, like, some of your favorite nicknames on the show now have, like, cartoon visualizations of what it looks like in action figure form. So you can still get the Almanac if you wish. And by golly, if you haven't heard, I started a publishing empire. It's a hard word for Harris to say, yeah. Cumulative Press, with a whopping inventory of 1 book that we're publishing. It happens to be my book. It's the first time I'm trying this. I'm terrified, of course. Rather than having someone else publish one of my novels, Pound Foolish is published by Cumulative Press, which is me. And of course I named the publishing company after the word it took me years to learn how to say properly. Also, something I have not shared on the show is that the dedication in the front of Pound Foolish explicitly says, "Thank you to every single yacht possum," which I genuinely mean. Which brings me to, I am bribing you to pre-order Pound Foolish, not at Amazon, but other places, bookshop.org and Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. Actually, if you just go to harrisfootball.com, there is now a Pound Foolish page that links off to the places where you can buy this thing, and in a place where I would prefer you do it. If we can get enough pre-orders in August, those will all count, except for Amazon ones do not count, in a rolling total toward the launch on September 1st. So, like, any purchase we get in August counts towards that 1 week there on the week of launch. And I would just like to have Cumulative Press hit the bestseller list. I don't know if it's realistic. I don't know the scope of how many copies you need to sell, but we're giving it a try because, frankly, it's hilarious and a thumb in the eye of a very broken book publishing industry. And so to incentivize you to do this, I am bribing you. Everyone who pre-orders the book, not at Amazon, but anywhere else, take a screen capture, send it to heyharris@harrisfootball.com. You will be entered for fun drawings on the show that begin tomorrow, Friday, August 6th. Right now we have like 130 entries. That is amazing. I'm so thankful. It's also not a very big number yet. We've got a lot more people than that listen to the show. And, we're going to get more as the month goes on because people come back to the show. So you'll never have a better time to get your name picked at random than tomorrow. Tomorrow we're giving away 2 prizes. One is a Zoom session with me, like right away. We'll probably do it this weekend if we can. We'll talk about your league, your keepers, your draft strategy, or not football stuff, whatever you want. And the other is Andy Behrens will record a video with your league's draft order in which he will randomly make fun of everyone in your league. These will be given away tomorrow, Friday, with more to come every day. We're going to do a drawing every day throughout August. I'm going to give away hats and t-shirts, more Zoom sessions. The grand prize, one lucky possum, will get to be on the show briefly with me. We'll record something toward the end of the month and put you on the podcast. And to that end, I wanted to say thank you because Matt Kathman has volunteered to purchase a book for a dozen folks who might not otherwise currently have the means, which of course I understand. We talk a lot about, hey, could you buy that? Could you buy? I recognize not everybody has the discretionary income, and I'm so happy to have you listening. So the first 12 people who are in that boat, please write me. There's absolutely no shame in it. Completely understand. Love you dearly. Write me, heyharris@harrisfootball.com. Right away, do it if you're interested. And the first 12 people will get a pre-ordered book from Matt, which is so generous. Thank you so much, Matt. You'll also get entered into the bribery drawings. And then, of course, you'll get Pound Foolish when it comes out on September 1st. Again, Matt Kathman, you're great. Thank you so much for that. And to everybody, get bribed.
Today's kickoff.
Okay, on today's show, it's a heroic day on the podcast. It's a really fun conversation about film room heroes, players we just enjoy on film and think are good at football. And sometimes their current situations don't necessarily lead to fantasy brilliance, but also sometimes situations change and we get them wrong in the preseason. And then, like in the long sweep of history, identifying good players is kind of good. So we'll do it today, and my guest will be Zachariason of LateRound.com. It'll be really fun. I thank you again so much for listening today. We are sponsored again by Wild Grain. They deliver sourdough breads, seasonal pastries, and French butter right to your door, and it's all made by independent bakeries, so you can feel like you're doing some good while you're enjoying simply the best bread and desserts. It's great. Everything from Wild Grain bakes from frozen and yet turns out so incredibly fresh. I love it. I have scarfed down the chocolate chip cookies from my latest Wild Grain box. You betcha. The stuff you get from Wild Grain tastes much better than packaged bread. It tastes like you just got it at the bakery that day, even if it's been sitting in your freezer for a week. You can just pop it in the oven, 25 minutes. You've got incredibly fresh bread. You can just have it with dinner whenever you decide. And the slow fermentation process is easier to digest. You can customize your box with classic, gluten-free, vegan, and protein options. Wild Grain has 40,000 five-star reviews, including mine. They've been USA Today's best food subscription box 3 years in a row. Visit wildgrain.com/Harris to get $30 off your first box and free croissants in every box. $30 off your first box and free croissants. wildgrain.com/Harris.
Today's guest.
So tell Harris, ooh, not in my league. Whoa, not in my league. Oh, I wish you knew what it was like in my league. Here's my Gmail for an invite to your league.
Not in his league. It's Zachariason. You can find him all over the place on social media. Just look up JJ's name or look up Late Round Quarterback. You can go to lateround.com for all things JJ. The Late Round podcast right now, about 4 episodes per week. Once the season starts, it's like 6 episodes per week, but they're manageably sized and very insightful, and I listen. Hello, JJ. Not in my league.
Yeah, hi. Unfortunately, that you say I'm found everywhere. That name is very Googleable, which is good and bad. It's good for people finding things, but bad if I ever do something criminally bad. Never.
Have we? So I just played you the various walk-up songs that you've had made for you on this show over the many, many years that you've been coming on this show, and one of them from last year highlighted the fact that we've been in fist fights 5 times. We have not been in the last year. We have not been in a fist fight though.
That's true. Yeah, we've calmed down on the fist fighting. I've not been arrested with post fist fight.
Well, it's such a pleasure to get you on. This time of year is when you get to make your cameo. I mean, it was much to my benefit that in earlier days I could get you on during the season. That was always one of my favorite things that I could. When I started out, you were a real regular, and now you're an entrepreneur that makes you busier. But honestly, we both know what really makes you busier. It's the dad thing. You got a lot of dad duties. You're a really good dad, and you're not as available as much during the year. We miss you around here. You're a blast to have on, but I really appreciate you coming for this time.
Of course, I gotta say, we had a long road trip. Not really. It was 6.5 hours. My COO, David Kitchen, and I going up to the Fantasy Football Expo, and we fired up the Harris Football Podcast, and we listened to you and Barron's wax poetic on it.
Come on. Look at that. Come on, me and Andy. All right, well, this is going to be fun. I've never had you on to do this particular show, and I should have. I should have previously. I said this on the Yacht Club yesterday with Andy, that of course, you a lot of your analysis when it comes to the NFL is kind of, I would say, I don't think of you as a data guy. I know your work really well. I think of you as somebody where your opinions are like spurred by data. Like that'll be the flicker of an idea, the flame that sort of sends you on your way. But then you watch the games. Like, I've known you long enough to know that you watch a ton of football and know the game, and you're not just spreadsheet diving for spreadsheet diving's sake, which makes it really fun to have you on to do this show, because you can use as much data as you want, but it's film room heroes, which just means players that you think are fun to run across your eyeballs on film.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. We were texting a little bit about it before, over the last however long, whenever we started planning this. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm definitely data oriented in the way that, people would listen to the show or like think about me would say, oh yeah, that's a data oriented analyst. But I do think that like what I try to do is provide context and nuance, and that, unfortunately, in the data side of this business and being an analyst and all that in the analysis, there's a lot of like, threshold related analysis that's done and very like black and white thinking. And I just don't think that's the way we should be playing this. So yeah, I mean, like, I watch every game every week, not as closely as you probably are, admittedly, but I'm watching everything. And even the guys we're going to talk about today, like, I hadn't watched them in a minute, and it was fun to go back and just sit there and watch and make sure that my notes made sense after, thinking about some of the players I wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, and the premise really is this can be a fantasy conversation. It also can be a discussion of why the fantasy results might not line up with our like for watching the guy on film. It really isn't a matter of us saying, this is a must draft. You have to have this guy. Like, maybe we'll see what the price winds up being. It's possible, or else maybe they're just football players that'll never pop as fantasy players, and that's okay too. I think the value of running these names through the listeners' ears, all of you folks out there listening, is to just hear are the nuances of what we're saying about these guys. Their situations might change. We think they're in some way, shape, or form good at football, and maybe eventually that could crop up in a way that is valuable. That isn't valuable right now. Was there anything else that, like, kind of criteria-wise, that you set to yourself? I didn't really set any parameters. You can really talk about anybody you want. Did you set up any parameters for yourself?
I really just went with, like, I think that my natural instinct was to go with players who maybe the consensus thinks are one way, but there's a little bit more to their game or differentiating points to their game that isn't talked about or thought about enough. I think I just kind of gravitated that direction. But I don't like if I were to have a theme, that would be it. But overall, I just kind of went with 5 guys that I like talking about that I think are interesting players.
Yeah, I pretty much did too, with the limitation that I'm trying not to say the same guys over and over and over. And so, I mean, we especially at the end of the season, we do so many lists that are look ahead lists because we're kind of out of 2025 topics. So then we start thinking, well, what would 2026 like? Who might turn out to be undervalued or whatever? And so a couple of my guys were on a couple of those late season lists. I'm trying not to overwhelm with the same names. Let's do it. It's an absolutely pointless countdown. The order does not matter in the slightest, except for it matters so much. Who's your number 5 film room hero?
I will go with probably one of the better players on my list, and then
Sure.
we'll get more nitty gritty later on. I'm gonna go with Nico Collins as my first one.
Yeah, he's great.
And the reason for this is that I think people view him as just like a standard big alpha X who gets down the field and he can catch the ball in these contested catch situations, which is true. Like he can do all those things. But I think the one thing that I see with Nico, and he's gotten better with this too, I think that, there are some players, they enter the league, especially, like day 1, day 2 picks, where they enter the league and you can immediately see like, oh, this is who this player is, and there might not be that much improvement upon that just based on, maybe it's just how hard they work, but also just like who they are as players and the kind of the roles they play. But with Nico, I think he's just gotten like better throughout his NFL career. You can make the like he's just like not completely different wide receiver than when he started in the league, but he's definitely not as raw as he was when he started out in the NFL. He's not as stiff as like most wide receivers who are like 6'4". He's 222 pounds. I think he's listed at. He gets off the line really efficiently. He gets separation almost immediately. And then that separation continues because he's so fast and he can, get through that route with that separation from start to finish. He fights after the catch. Obviously, he has that big frame. And sometimes you see perimeter guys kind of go down and not fight. Mike Evans kind of has that to him, but like Nico Collins is a fighter, man. Like he will do stuff after the catch and he will continue, with that yak. So I think he's just one of those players that, I don't want to just throw into this archetype of just being this like big bodied X who, or as Harmon would say, or sometimes sacrificial. I think that he's one who wins before and after the catch. And it's a rare combination. I just think he's a really good player and he's often kind of like not thrown in the elite tier enough of wide receivers in the league. He's usually like kind of next on that list or even after that. But I think he's just a really complete wide receiver at this time. And I give him a lot of props for, in my opinion, just getting a lot better as he's gone through the NFL.
I agree. I think he's great. He's not a sure thing for fantasy, even though I'm ranking him real high because I hope that he delivers kind of the real season that would people go, oh my God, he did 1,600 yards. But like for film grades, I think his hands got better.
Yeah.
His speed is tremendous already. I think his routes got better. Like he got a little more elusive. He's never going to be like DeVonta Smith. He's never going to be like the incredibly quick guy, but
Sure.
He's gotten quicker and certainly does not run the rail on the outside. Certainly does not do the Quentin Johnston
Yes.
sacrificial X thing. Certainly is like a major part of everything they do. And the Texans definitely paid him like that. They paid him. They said, okay, like he deserves everything that the top guys at that position get. Can we quibble with the situation? Can we worry about the quarterback? Can we say there's an awful lot of other receivers who are interesting there? Sure. All that stuff matters. And if someone wants to slag him and say, meh, I'm not as sure. So instead of where Harris has him at 5, I have him at 11. I can't get mad. I can't see. I don't know. I can't see the future. I like Jaden Higgins a lot. I thought about Jaden Higgins for this list, to be honest. Where do you have Collins?
I think in like the 8 range. Like he's right after Drake London for me.
Sure.
So I can pull up my rankings. And, yeah.
I mean, they belong in the same conversation. They're very similar, I think.
Yeah, I have met wide receiver 9, and it's largely I have AJ Brown one spot ahead, and that's a more highly volatile situation. Obviously, it's just that I'm leaning into what that could be. But yeah, I think Nico's he's just good, right? But I too I like the other pieces there, which is why that ranking looks the way. Like I too like Jaden Higgins. I thought that he showed a lot last year. I even think like there's intrigue with like Jalen Knoll and being a down the field slot threat. And then obviously Tank Dell, cross your fingers with him and if he's healthy. But I just think overall Nico's just a really talented and good player.
I agree. My number 5, and this utterly does not matter, pointless countdown. I picked Alec Pierce. Someone who I made quite a lot of fun of for a couple of years on the show. I would say if there's, I said in the Almanac, if I could pick out one player at any skill position who changed my opinion of him most in 2025, I think it would be Alec Pierce. Mm-hmm. And then I said, I wish it was all the way actionable because there are certainly problems here, not least of which is his health and not knowing whether, he'll ever run. So what, ankle surgery I think he had, is that right?
Yeah.
Like 4 to 6 month ankle surgery. Cool. In the summer. Cool. So yeah, like there's reasons to be worried in the immediate term. And I'm not trying to sell you Alec Pierce as good as Nico Collins, because he's not. He's not that level of player. He is that size. And he probably is that. I mean, he's probably faster, to be honest. He's really fast. He's kind of was the situational deep threat during the time when people were trying to turn him into a thing for fantasy. He was one of those 4 weeks on, 12 weeks off, but the total numbers look good because the 4 weeks on are insane. I think he had never really shown he could run a stop route. He'd never really shown he could run crossers. He just pretty much had just run straight down the field. Right. It's not like the Colts threw him screens. That wasn't super creative. But if he wasn't hurt and, Michael Pittman left, I would say some of that Pittman work makes sense going to Pierce because he's a bigger body than Josh Downs, and I would like to see him with the ball in his hands. And for the first time ever, like I saw him making, especially stop routes. I mean, he was like stop on dime type player, and because he's so fast, he had defensive backs just leaping out of their skin. And that's what I'm always looking for, sort of the defensive reaction. Now, I talked about Nico's hands getting better. Next guy, Alec Pierce's hands, not always great. And so that's a worry right there. But yeah, if I'm going to say that a dude like probably changed, I slagged him a lot for a couple years, and I like partway through the season started going, okay, he's pretty good. He's not too bad. Like for me, I'm stubborn. That's a pretty big change.
Yeah, I would agree. I think last year, when I was watching him, I remember seeing that he was smarter against zone. He was finding those soft spots. He's still a player that's not, and it's funny because, well, I'll say it in a second about the segue to my next player, but he's very like, he's like a linear, he's like a guy who is not going to be as like twitchy, just given his build and what he does and him being such a good down the field threat. But his body control's crazy. Like he's really, really good down the field, unbelievable in contested catch situations. Arguably I think he's one of the best in contested catch situations across the league, given what he's done. And he's another one of those players like Nico, Chris, where like he's gotten so much better as his career has gone on. Like coming out, he was really raw, and I didn't, I have my prospect model and stuff, and I know this is not a data oriented thing, but there were a lot of concerns for him coming out, and he has just gotten better and better and better, and we just see that sometimes with these players, and I give him a lot of credit, and it got him paid too, so good for him.
A quick break to thank Leesa for sponsoring. Not everybody hearing the sound of my voice this very moment needs a new mattress, but I bet some of you do. If you've been waking up stiff and sore, can't figure out why, it might just be time. And if it is, I personally cannot recommend Leesa more. I sleep on a Leesa. I have the classic style. Perfect for me. You can take a quiz at leesa.com, that's Leesa.com, and find out which mattress feel is right for you. These beds are made in America. This company works with local nonprofits across the U.S. to donate thousands of mattresses per year to families in need. They're committed to eco-friendly processes and materials, And when you get a new Lisa, you get 4 months to sleep on it and decide if it's perfect for you. If it's not, they will refund you, no questions asked. And even if it's not time for a new mattress in your household, maybe you can keep them in mind for when it is. It's right now, their Labor Day early access sale with 25% off select mattresses at lisa.com. And if you check out using the code Harris, that's another $50 off the top. 25% off select mattresses and another $50 off lisa.com. Use that code Harris. We are back with JJ. We are talking about our film room heroes for 2026. JJ, who's number 4?
Yeah, I'm gonna change things up. He was gonna be my third guy that I was gonna mention, but it's a great segue because I have Josh Downs on my list, Chris. After you talked about Alec Pierce, I think he's an interesting player to talk about this year because there's such a horrible depth chart at the moment in Indianapolis. With Alec Pierce banged up and not practicing, and then it's literally Nick Westbrook-Akine. Like it's just nothing else going on there. And so there's naturally a lot of reports going on right now about Josh Downs playing the outside a little bit more. And when I watched Downs, I loved him as a prospect, obviously a slot-oriented player. And I am sort of a sucker for these slot guys, I will admit. The guys who are great route runners, who can create separation. He creates separation. He's very twitchy, but also incredibly fast. And his movements are really efficient, with that speed. But he's got that really good short area quickness, change of direction, one of the best parts of his game, in my opinion. And so he can create separation short and deep. He can get down the field, mostly out of the slot. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens if and when they do force him more to the outside, because he's not big. I mean, he's not a big player. I think he plays bigger than his size often, but he's certainly not a big, a wide out that you would expect to win off the line consistently on the outside, but we'll see. Because he's just been a slot only guy so far in his career, but I do think that he's been incredibly good in that role. So I'm very intrigued to see if he does get more of that work on the outside, what that all looks like.
Yeah, he's fun, and he came up and we had pretty long conversation about him on the Yacht Club yesterday, which some of the folks listening didn't hear. So I'll recapitulate a little bit of that, which is, that even that deep stuff out of the slot. Every time the Colts do it, I'm always like, why don't they do that more?
Yeah, exactly.
And they don't, and it's weird. It's that whole thing about assuming rational coaching. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe he's just too little, and he has gotten concussions. Like I think he had 2 a couple years ago, right? Maybe that's just they've decided we're not going to use him that way. I don't know. It does feel like he's capable of more of a very, he's a 99th percentile slot guy. He's a 9th percentile air yards at the target guy. Hey, I want data. And he's the role hasn't been very exciting, but there is potential for more. There's also a little birdie whispering to me that says they suspect that Keenan Allen might be headed there.
Yep.
And if that happens, that may change that dynamic, but it shouldn't change it too much because Keenan Allen himself probably is not have that much. He has to be a supplemental player. And if anything, it probably drives Downs' ADP way too low.
Right.
But it could also interfere with the idea of a big ceiling. So I guess we'll wait and see on that one. My number 4. So Pierce had wound up on that undervalued list back in December before I knew anything about the ankle, obviously. This guy did too. I actually put a tight end on this list despite my stance on tight end being a useless position. I have Brenton Strange on the list. I hate doing it because it's not really the same usage, but when I watch him on film, I get Trey McBride vibes a little bit. Mm-hmm. His hands are awesome. His jumping and body control is awesome. And McBride, when he was before he was breaking out, he was doing the things he was doing more down the field. They don't throw the ball too far down the field to Brenton Strange. And so, I got to calm down, obviously. This is a good advice for me generally. I think the McBride last year on targets of 15-plus yards in the air had 27 targets and 15 catches. Strange had 8 and 6. So,
Yeah.
Shut up, Harris. But I had him. He was an absolute revelation to me during the year last year. I had him tight end number 29 going into last season, and it's not like he went crazy or anything. Although he missed some time with injury, finishes 23rd among tight ends. But the film I thought was really good. It's definitely, of course, subject to interpretation, but I think he's obviously not really even a tight end. He's a wide receiver who plays in the slot. Not going to block anybody. But, I think his hands are great. I think he's fast. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a breakout guy.
Yeah, I like the call a lot, especially because it's a situation where gamers are not going to be as, ready to jump because there's just a lot of bodies there, right? And they're good players in Jacksonville, and he's one of them. I couldn't agree more. He's I think an underrated athlete. He's not like explosive the way that like a Brock Bowers could be explosive. He's not powerful the way that like, I don't know, George Kittle would be or something like that. But I do think that he's a very balanced, like natural catcher. He's just a solid tight end. So I think it's a really good call out for someone who generally, when you look at what the masses believe and think and, the way people are going to be drafting, he's an afterthought for the most part, but he was a pretty important piece to them throughout last season.
I have him 8 among tight ends, so you can't argue I'm not.
Wow, look at that. That's bullish. That's awesome. I love it.
I'm trying. It comes a point where basically I'm just waiting at tight end, and so
yeah, of course.
Whoever's there at the 14th round is who I'm taking. But very often it'll turn out to be Brenton Strange. Who's number 3 on your film room hero list?
I'm gonna go with Chase Brown.
I love him. He was on this list for me last year.
Yeah, I think that again, going with like that theme of like what the consensus might be thinking about these players based on whatever reasoning, and then me thinking that player is generally better than what the masses might think. And I think with Chase Brown, there's this idea that, he was a day 3 pick and there's no way that this guy could be any good, but I think he is. I think he's been really, really strong. He's a pretty decisive runner, sometimes being too decisive, I would argue. I think that got him into trouble a little bit to start last year because the offensive line was playing like garbage. And he was sort of, he's facing tougher defensive fronts. Burrow wasn't under center, and, he wasn't necessarily as patient as he should have been. But overall, I mean, he's got this explosiveness to his game. And he doesn't have to rely on just getting to the outside to showcase that, which I think is really important. He's got that top speed. He's fast. He finishes runs too. Maybe not the best tackle breaker in the world, but I think that and maybe he's a little bit like faster than he is elusive, but the explosiveness is there. Like I said, he generally is just going to take what's blocked for him plus a little bit more. And then the other side of this, he's a really natural receiver, like a really good receiver, super smooth. It doesn't look like a chore when he's catching passes. So, I just think that he's like the unsung hero of this offense with studs, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase being as good as they are, obviously Joe Burrow under center. I just love Chase Brown. I've loved him since he entered the league. And I think that there's been nothing really to show me that he's not a really good player. And, last year there's definitely some like anchoring bias going on because he started off so slow, but it was not his fault. I didn't see it being a Chase Brown problem. And obviously he started to come through a lot more as things opened up more for him.
Yeah, there's a real obvious reason what happened. It was the dude wears 9 on that team.
Yeah, exactly.
It was Joe Burrow being hurt, and then
even the dude who wore number 16, if we're being honest, when Flacco came.
Yeah, and Flacco made it better. He got better when Flacco came in, like the whole offense did. But like, you're right, not what it needs to be with when Burrow is around, and like, no, everybody knows he's been a flag player on the show. Everybody knows. Everybody's tired of me on the Chase Brown. Glad you like him, because I really do too.
Yeah, I love Chase Brown.
Is he a transcendent player? Probably not. Is he someone you'd say, wow, one of the 5 best running backs in the league is Chase Brown? No, I would probably say no. And that's almost like illuminated by virtue of what you said, that when everything was falling apart around him, the transcendent players are supposed to Derrick Henry their way out of it and still be really good. Yeah. And like Chase Brown couldn't do that. So, okay, fine. That's why he's not going to be taken in the first round. But second round?
All day.
You know?
Yeah.
Maybe. My number 3, he's not going in the second round anymore, but I might take him later, but I'm not talking about fantasy. It's the sprinter soldier, Bucky Irving. Get what I did there? Sprinter soldier. Because he's Bucky. He was actually on the acid reflux all-star list last year. This time, actually a list that Josh and I are doing tomorrow on the show. I know cousin Josh, my cousin who comes on every Friday, he's gonna call him bust. He does not like Bucky Irving. I think mostly he has the complaint that a lot of people have, which is all about injury, just too small, tiny bones, as we say, and he doesn't run on the perimeter. He tries to run where the plays are supposed to go, and that winds up, supposedly getting him more punished than other players. Maybe that's right, and whatever. I guess I can't really prove a negative. I did not find last year's disappointment discouraging in terms of his ability. And I'll guess I kind of don't really believe what ADP says right now because nobody's actually drafting. It's all just based on expert ranks, and eventually we'll get kind of whatever better data on the rank. Like, I'm going to guess that the market's going to be down on him because it was frustrating. He played 10 games, like whatever he had, 800 yards from scrimmage, 700, whatever it was. Like, it was pretty frustrating. And like week by week, you'd get the Rachaad White game or you get the Sean Tucker game,
Right.
Turner game. I am still in. He's probably not a burner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really find him north-south like he's going to blow you away. But my God, laterally.
Yeah.
And that's why I have another guy that's going to fit that description that's coming up on this list in a minute. And that's why if those little guys, the sub 200 guys, can do it between the tackles, that's why they have to have that thing that helps them get out of trouble and not bounce everything outside.
Right.
I honestly, like, Bucky Irving's not any smaller than James Cook, is he? He's the same size.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but it wouldn't be by a ton. Yeah.
Yeah. They're about the same size. And, James Cook comes into the league and for a year and a half is trying to bounce everything outside, and they're benching him for Damian Harris. And then someone gets a hold of him and says, you have to run where the play is supposed to go. And he starts doing it. And now he wins a rushing title. And like, I feel like Irving came into the league knowing how to do that, go where it's supposed to be blocked. I recognize it hurts more. you get hit more. And he got hurt. He got hurt as a result. Like, I mean, what hurt? That's a great question. I still don't really have, it was the foot that became a shoulder as far as I remember.
It was weird.
Yeah. And now they're telling us more in training camp. It's been more about shoulder. So there are all sorts of caveats about this year's situations, but just watching him run is an absolute blast.
I agree with you in terms of, like, he's one of the hardest players for me because situationally I'm scared, right? Because, they use Sean Tucker at the goal line last year. Like, Bucky Irving didn't have a single goal line rush last year. Not to be, I'm trying to stay away from data, but they didn't use him at the goal. They didn't use him at the goal line, and then they add Kenneth Gainwell, who could play a pass catching role if nothing else. But I agree that this is where it's so difficult because Bucky is so good. I mean, crazy feet. I mean, he's like you don't think he can escape where he is. You think he's about to get gobbled up, and then he just doesn't because he's just so like elusive and quick. The long speed's not really there for him, but the contact balance certainly is. And they haven't used him as much as I thought that a team would use him at the NFL level as a receiver too. He was a really good natural receiver in college, and he's been a good natural receiver in the NFL. It's just he hasn't seen that volume the way that I think he should. And obviously Rachaad White's been kind of in the way because that's the only thing that Rachaad White can really do. And then again, now it's like, what are we doing with Kenneth Gainwell's presence there, which is a little bit scary. But as a player, which is what we're focused on here, yeah, I'm a big Bucky Irving fan. I think he's a very good player.
Yeah, and I'm not going crazy with his rank. Last year, I think I could be wrong, but I think he might have been a second round pick last year, if I'm not mistaken. And I wasn't buying it at that price. I have him 20 among running backs. Is that too high?
I think it's around ADP. It's around where I'm a little like, my problem is that, like, again, I worry about what the role, because like obviously the high leverage stuff in fantasy is pass catching and goal line work, right? Like we want that for our running backs, and I'm a little bit worried about that. So I'm a few spots below, but I'm not going to fault anyone if they want to go, because I think Bucky Irving's good, and so it's a situation based evaluation more than anything else.
Let me say thanks to Fantasy Cares. If you've ever thought about adding a charitable element to your fantasy league, fantasycares.org is a wonderful place to do it. Even just like one entry fee out of your league's kitty honestly does make a difference. That might seem small depending on your league's stakes, but if enough people do it, it adds up. And you and your league mates can feel good because Fantasy Cares is a name we all trust. That's our friend Scott Fish's organization. You, of course, hear Scott on the show all season long. Fantasy Cares runs the Scott Fish Bowl and many other events. Heck, you can go to fantasycares.org right now, enter their Pick'em pool. They've got a Survivor pool. Everything you see at fantasycares.org is in support of dozens of charities that do amazing work, including Toys for Tots, which come holiday time will benefit so much from all of our generosity. So give it a look. fantasycares.org. We're back with JJ. We've got 4 more names to talk about. Who is your number 2 film room hero?
So I told you that I have a thing for slot guys, and my next one is Khalil Shakir. I just think he's an underrated player, and part of that is the stupid role that he played last year and the way that people might be viewing him, because they just, he's like a 4-yard ADOT or whatever it was. But he's very different than Josh Downs, as a slot guy, where Downs can win with that separation and speed, and Khalil Shakir is a little bit bulkier than a lot of slot guys. I mean, not necessarily like, huge, but I just mean, thicker than what you'll see with like a Josh Downs. But I'm always impressed with him once the ball is in his hands. It feels like he should go down, and then he just consistently is making guys miss. The downside, again, he's not as flashy, not as explosive as a player like Downs might be, but he makes up for it by making those guys miss. And honestly, when I watch, when I'm watching the Bills, he always seems to be making plays at the right time for that team. It's always he's like Josh Allen's go-to. Now maybe that changes this year with DJ Moore there. But he is a reliable target, if nothing else. He's just a reliable player overall. And when there's some players that you watch, and I've started to feel this way about like Alec Pierce, who we talked about earlier, where you're like, I think this guy is actually pretty smart and he knows what he's doing out there, as opposed to just kind of going through the motions. Khalil Shakir to me is a smart player. Like he knows how to find these soft spots against zone. And I think that he can handle more than that stupid low ADOT role that he had last year. And hopefully having another player in that offense will open him up a little bit to doing more within that offense. Now, not necessarily from a volume perspective, but maybe just an efficiency and more down the field stuff. But I think Khalil Shakir, I liked him a lot. This is one of those cases where, I liked him a lot coming out, as a day 3 pick, and he really hasn't shown anything for me to feel otherwise. I think he's a really good player.
Can I quote myself from the Almanac about Khalil
Yeah,
Shakir?
Of course. Let's hear it.
Does Shakir sometimes do more than that? Meaning run 3 yards and fall down, turn around. Yeah. He's a dang baller. He does. Yeah. He's an absolute baller. He's absolutely probably a better football player than he is a stat guy.
Yeah.
And may always be. But like Week 15 against the Patriots, it's burned in my brain. 4th quarter, 4th and 3, New England up 3. Bills are out of field goal range, so they go. Josh Palmer is the lead primary target on a crosser. Absolutely does not get open. Shocker. And Marcus Jones is on Khalil Shakir. Like you're supposed to win that if you're the New England. Shakir's not supposed to beat Marcus Jones. And the ball is a little underthrown, and Shakir comes back and it's actually interference, and it doesn't matter because Shakir just catches it around Marcus Jones's body. He's just that kind of guy. He's the kind of guy. Honestly, it feels like the Bills, who have in my way of thinking, been not awesome personnel-wise for a little while, are trying to assemble that kind of guy. Because I think DJ Moore is also that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Just the guy who, the run through the brick wall, the do whatever. I don't care. Just like, I need to win. We need to make a play here. I love this call. I looked at his name and I was like, it's so hard to distinguish him from the other quickie, funny, Jaden Reedy, like. Mm-hmm. But there is a little something special about Khalil Shakir, to my way of thinking.
I agree. Like I said, like he's just, if you're watching a Bills playoff game or like a big game for Buffalo, and it's like late in the game, and like that he's going to be a target, like that he's going to be there, and it's fun. Like it's been a pretty fun career for him so far, all things considered too. I mean, he's a day 3 pick, not someone that like people were like overly high on, and I'm proud of him, Chris. I'm very proud of Khalil Shakir.
You should be. Yeah. He's one of your fellas. My number 2 on the other, I actually mentioned him earlier. I came out of the side of my mouth. DeVonta Smith. I decided to put on here. DeVonta Smith has a history of being on kind of undervalued lists from a few years ago, and then 2 years ago, 2023, he had the first half from hell. He was the midseason fantasy LVP because people had drafted him real high along with A.J. Brown, and it hadn't worked very well. But then actually in the second half of 2023, he scored a bunch of touchdowns and didn't wind up burning you too bad. The reason to have the conversation about DeVonta Smith for me is that obviously no A.J. Brown. Obviously, a new offense. They're changing. This is not a matter of like, we need to figure out who's going to get the A.J. Brown work. No, it's going to be all a newest. There's no A.J. Brown there, so there's going to be a new way of thinking about offense. And do people think DeVonta Smith is only one kind of thing or another? Because yes, he's 120 pounds and his knee hurts. No question, he's tiny. He's very skinny, but I love DeVonta Smith on like doing Jameson Williams things, and I love DeVonta Smith on a 0-yard screen, which they do a lot. Right. And like I'll say, from having kind of re-osmosised these Eagles games as I was watching film this summer, something else I put in the Almanac that just a thought as like a meta about watching how defenses took care of the Eagles. Like, which receiver were they paying attention to between Smith and Brown? It was Smith all day long. Obviously that's kind of what defenses do now because everybody's playing back and you're trying to limit the big play, and DeVonta Smith is, no matter how fast A.J. Brown still is or isn't, he's not as fast as DeVonta Smith. So I get that. But coverage rolled Smith's way more than it rolled Brown's way. I think defenses are telling you who they consider to be more dangerous. I get that there's a question of like sturdiness and would he ever hold up to like getting smacked around the way an alpha receiver needs to get smacked around? I don't know. That's a good question. For fantasy, this is going to be a high variance player, no question. But I think there's a reason one of Heisman is reason he's good. Like, I just think people think he's a situational deep threat and he's not.
Could not agree more. I've had a problem in basically he's basically like a target in my draft guide every year, DeVonta Smith, and it hasn't been like a huge thing that's burned me, but obviously there have been instances where it hasn't been as favorable, but I just think he's one of the best route runners in the game, super efficient. He can change speeds well. He's a good ball tracker too. And sometimes with these like smaller wide receivers, you can see them like tense up as they go toward, through the middle of the field. And you don't see that with DeVonta Smith very frequently. I just think he's a baller from that perspective. Obviously not the kind of like, he doesn't get yak in the traditional way of like breaking tackles and such, but he can create that separation and create yak just through big plays, and he can generate those big plays. So I have him he's a top 12 wide receiver for me this year. I'm very into him.
I have him 10.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah. So we're going to be on the high side with Smith. There's some, who knows? The receiver, I've said it a million times. It's hard to fit a sliver of paper among the frickin' top 30 receivers. They're just all great athletes, and if they luck into the right situation, they can George Pickens their way to eternity. Right. So I can't promise anything, but I think Smith is the kind of dude who, if it goes wrong, it won't be because of the space between his ears or like a lack of talent.
Right.
All right. We're at your number 1 film room hero, I'm sure, knowing that this was going to be a pointless countdown, I'm sure you put so much thought into who'd be number one. Who is it?
Yeah, I went with a homer pick. Me growing up in Pittsburgh, and being I'm not really a Steelers fan anymore, just given our jobs. I still root for them though. And one of the players that I think is one of the most underrated running backs in football is Jaylen Warren.
You're getting a virtual hug from me.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely think that he's like a fringe, like top 10 running back in the game. Like just so good. Real unbelievable contact balance. Like he bounces off defenders like a freaking pinball. And then he's able to stay upright, and you just say, you're sitting there, you're like, how is this even possible? And then he keeps moving downfield. I do think that he invites that contact sometimes too much, especially it's kind of weird because he's not like the largest human being, playing football. And so, that could maybe get him into trouble at times, but he plays bigger than he is. Like I just said, he's not the biggest running back that you'll find, but he definitely plays that way. He initiates that contact, which makes it really fun to watch. But I think he's also a pretty patient runner overall. And then going back to sort of what I said with like a Chase Brown, he's just a really natural pass catcher, especially once he gets going into space, like he's just one of the better running backs in the game, when you can get him the ball and give him that space. And he's great in pass pro too. So I don't know, man. I get so tilted that every Steelers coaching staff refuses to give him, a more meaningful workload. And I know that we're going to be frustrated again this year, but I'm going to draft Jaylen Warren again this year because I just think he's very good.
He is very good. And, the market isn't going to go crazy on him. I really don't think it is. I think we're still, we're going to still be ahead of the average person who just feels like, people have been telling me about Jaylen Warren and he never really works out. Yeah, and why is Kenneth Gainwell, blah, 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 blah. So I don't think we're going to have to take him as an RB2, are we? He's a flex.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping. I do my targets and like I have him at RB 27 right now in my rankings. So
I have 27 PPR. I have 29 standard.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we're in the same area. I do think that I do know that the market likes Warren more, like from an ADP perspective, likes Warren more than Dowdle, and I'm kind of just hoping that like the Mike McCarthy coached Rico Dowdle narrative like really starts to take off over the next, like as the preseason starts and stuff like that. And Dowdle's fine. I just think Jaylen Warren's a better player, and he can do more as a pass catcher, and he's good in pass pro. And I want him to see that bigger workload. It was starting to kind of come to fruition a little bit last year, and then they're like, no, we want to use Kenneth Gainwell, and we want to make him a thing. And obviously Najee Harris was there blocking him for years before, because Mike Tomlin, it was, Najee Harris is the equivalent of Mike Tomlin's son. But yeah, I mean, I really, really hope that they use more Warren this year because I think he's just an incredibly good player.
I do too. Really, really good. Fun. He was a super deep sleeper, and then he was a flag player. We have a long history of him here. That's hence the hug. People are like, oh, this is a setup. JJ picked players. No, it's not a setup.
We talked zero. Yeah, we talked zero about this. Yeah.
All right. At number one, I put a player whose virtues I have not extolled often on the show, but not because I think I never was telling people he was bad. Everybody knows what he does. He does incredibly. I've just been suspicious of the size. And this year I've just decided to not worry so much about it because it's DeVonta Smith. As a blast, like, wow, Harris, you're really going out on a limb. A dude who just got a huge contract and is the only good player on an NFL team, you're saying is a film room hero. You really are stretching the incredible brain power that you usually manifest. But it's a change for me because, 2024, I called him a bust. Wrong, incorrect, bad call. It wasn't because I didn't think he was fast. It was because I didn't think he'd last. I thought he'd be on the Bucky Irving trail of hurting something, having somebody fall weird on his leg or whatever. But we weren't calling him a bust in 2025 before the season. He obviously wasn't a bust last year at all. I had him in a couple of teams. And then at the end of last season, last December, one of the lists that we do is, what are your predictions for what your top picks will be by the time next August rolls around? And both Cousin Josh and I had DeVonta Smith in our top 7 overall picks because it was just so overpowering how fast he was and how quick he was. And yeah, he doesn't invite a lot of contact. And yes, he does sort of violate the rule of the bounce outside guy, but he gets away with it because he's an A+ in speed and an A+ in quickness. Like, he is ludicrous. And it's incredibly, obviously, fun to watch these highlights. He's quite a player. He certainly can annoy you with negative gains, but give him any space at all, and it's absolutely a problem. And I guess I wanted to bring him up by way of saying, here we are. I'm calling him a hero. I admit it. Like, I can change my opinions when reality hits me in the face. And then also, here we were sitting in December at the end of last year deciding Devon Achane is a top 7 overall player. And because Tua Tagovailoa and Jaylen Warren are gone, that means Devon Achane's no longer a first-round pick. I think that's wrong. And I think we're wrong all the time in our ability to predict which teams are going to be truly awful, like completely unable to support fantasy weapons. This dude, he needs to stay healthy. And I'm, just because he's stayed healthy so far, every season's a small sample size, you don't know for sure. But like, I think I'm taking this dude at like 10 overall and feeling okay about it.
The thing with Achane is like the thing with like the way I feel about Luther Burden right now, where I don't think anyone's right or wrong. Where like I see the upside and downside case. Like, I've been a big Devon Achane guy since he was drafted. I thought that his skill set and his speed just naturally fit really well with Mike McDaniel and that Shanahan type system. And obviously, we saw that come to fruition. I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. I'm saying that because I'm actually on the opposite side of you of like being genuinely worried about the situation this year. Agreed that we don't know for sure, and it could bite me. Like, I think that's where the nuance needs to enter the discussion and not, go on social media and start screaming about how stupid people are for drafting Devon Achane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's more so like, Mike McDaniel's gone too. And I do think that scheme fit was very good for Achane. Now, he's obviously overcome and just shown that he's good in general. But we do have a sample of, when Tua was going through the concussion stuff where that offense looked tremendously horrific and Achane wasn't, as effective and as strong of a fantasy asset during that time. And then I agree with the philosophy and the general notion of like predicting situation. That I, certainly am not someone who thinks that like we're going to be able to understand which defense is really good, et cetera, et cetera. But I look at the Dolphins right now, and have you seen a worse wide receiver room in all of your years of doing this? Like, genuinely, like it's bad, right? It's like it's very and Malik Willis is obviously a huge question mark. I think at the very least, a mobile quarterback like that should be able to open up holes for a runner if they operate that offense in a smart way and run a decent amount of like RPOs and stuff like that. But I do have some fear about the situation overall. I think there's a chance that there's like a lot of play action stuff that happens that, doesn't force Achane the ball as much as a receiver, or, there's just more volatility involved with that situation versus like a Chase Brown, let's say, in that you could go after or be gravitated towards, in that like 1-2 turn area. But if this being a show about, guys that we're looking at from a film perspective, yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir about Devon Achane. I love the dude. I think he's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and I knew you would, and everybody would, and that's why bringing him up, I really wanted to have that conversation. I was interested in your opinion, and I appreciate that you're saying, you're disagreeing, but you're saying, like, I understand that the quality of the player can absolutely overcome the situation. Yeah. You're just worried that the deck might be just too stacked, which, of course, coming from the other end, I absolutely understand. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some talk about like, if you look at like Miami's, people are saying like, well, Miami's offense was not very good last year. And so therefore, but like, I don't know, man, part of me is like, this could be bad this year. Like it could end up going south, and that would definitely scare me. But I don't, if I were to call him a fade, I'd call him a soft fade as opposed to like, don't draft Devon Achane no matter what, because the don't draft them no matter what type players are the players that I actually don't like, that I don't think are very good, as well as being in like what I predict to be a certain, a bad situation or something. I think this is at least a player that is clearly very good.
Right. All right, well, I put these names in today's show notes so you can review and remember who we picked as guys that we liked. You can follow JJ all over socials. Look up Late Round QB and you'll find him there. Of course, go to lateround.com for all your late round needs and subscribe to the Late Round podcast, which is basically a daily affair, sometimes during the season even more than a daily affair. And a lot of great nuggets will come out of those shows, a lot of actionable items that will help your teams. You know, I miss this. If in this show's history, you were part of the very first generation of guests, and you would come on like every couple of weeks, and I love having you on. And I know it's not as possible anymore, and it's because of the small humans in your house, who I love, so I'm not mad at those humans. But I appreciate you very much. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. It's always good to chop it up. And I also appreciate the platform to just kind of talk about what I'm seeing instead of what I'm seeing in the spreadsheets. You know, it's nice to change things up a little bit. I appreciate that.
And we appreciate it too, and I appreciate all of you. Let's thank the sponsors that made today's show possible. We had Wild Grain, Lisa, and Fantasy Cares. These are three folks that you hear about a lot on the show over the years, and that means many of your fellow listeners have supported them in one way or another, and I appreciate that so much. If you are interested in what I had to say, you can find details in the show notes and, of course, at harrisfootball.com. I appreciate how much ownership you do take. Of course, not everybody can support every sponsor. If you don't currently have a need for today's sponsors or the means to indulge in them, I'm so happy to have you listening. It's amazing to have you here. It's a great audience. I can't believe the audience. It's so wonderful. Thank you so much for everything, the support. This entire thing is all because of you. That's going to do it for this Thursday episode. It is Thursday, right? It's been kind of a long week. A lot of things launching, a lot of stuff putting out in the world. I didn't mention the book tour. I'm not sure how many people are sticking around here at the end, but I should keep mentioning the book tour because it starts 2 weeks from Sunday up in Tacoma, Washington. And then on back-to-back days, I'm in Tacoma and then Portland and then Las Vegas and then Scottsdale, Arizona. 4 straight days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Each event starts at 7. You can find details if you go to the Pound Foolish page at harrisfootball.com. There's a graphic at the bottom that says exactly which bars. They're all at bars. And the way it's going to go is it'll be a reading of a microphone, and I'll do a reading of the book for a little bit, 20 minutes, something like that. After that, it's just a meetup. It's just a listener meetup where we all get to introduce each other and shake hands and have fun and talk about stupid football stuff and stupid show stuff. And I've done so many meetups over the years with many, many possums and enjoy it so much. You'll have a fun time. I guarantee you'll have a fun time. And so love it if you're in those areas, if you can show up. Remember to get bribed for tomorrow because we're doing our very first drawing of many tomorrow. And also, if you can't afford a pre-order, the first dozen people who send me an email because of Matt's generosity will get you a pre-order. And then I'm burying the lead. The most important thing of all is Friday's podcast. Yeah, sure, there's drawings. That matters, but you know what matters. The Prince of Darkness is returning from his long hiatus. We'll find out what he's been doing. Cousin Josh is joining the show. He and I are going to do an annual list. Our acid reflux teams, the players, we might draft them, but we know they're going to make us sick to our stomach. That will be fun as well. Until then, thanks again so much for listening. Your hat is awesome. You're awesome for wearing it. I will talk to you tomorrow.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The closing theme is Say Yes by The Wellspring. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.